There's something called moon wobble, which I think Mandi's probably
And the
better
super
called.
moon.
Yeah, super.
Oh, the super moon.
Yeah.
All these moons, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really.
Okay, so we're going to talk today about the topic of blue moons and also their counterpart black moons. So blue moons technically are 2 full moons in the same calendar month, and black moons are 2 new moons in the same calendar month. But astrologically, it's much rarer to have 2 full moons occurring in the same astrological sign, in the same lunar cycle. So you could have a full moon right at the beginning of a sign, say a full moon in Pisces, and then at the end of the sign another full moon, and technically astrologically a black moon would be a new moon right at the beginning of a sign and a new moon right at the end of the sign. So you get a full lunar month occurring within one astrological sign. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, that's that's a very interesting and somewhat different way of looking at it. That most people don't look at things in that kind of way. But I completely concur with you, Marcus, that a blue moon is the existence of 2 full moons in one calendar month. This is very true. But you see, we've gone and named all these moons. So that's a blue moon. Black moon you've just named. There's also a red moon. And there's something called moon wobble, which I think Mandi's probably
And the
better
super
called.
moon.
Yeah, super.
Oh, the super moon.
Yeah.
All these moons, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really type people lunatics.
Yeah.
A super moon is quite easy to define, and then I'll let you go and define some of the others. A super moon is simply because the moon's orbit is not a circle, it's an ellipse, it's like an oval shape. So sometimes it comes closer to us than at other times, and when it's really, really close, about as close as it gets in its orbit, then it looks massively big. Right? A super moon.
So the technical term is the apogee and perigee. Right?
That's correct.
Perigee,
Yes,
yes.
that's right.
Yeah, so apogee is like a quite away from the moon, away from the earth,
The furthest.
and the furthest, and then the perigee is more close.
Yeah.
I find it
Nearest.
interesting, nearest. So I find it quite interesting because if I do the mundane and the financial study, these 2 positions usually turn people a little bit crazy, especially if you look at the financial market. People are really like a sell a lot or buy a lot. A little bit irrational.
Which is which? Is there a tendency to sell or buy on like?
Depend on situation of the stock market. But these two dates, usually people a little bit out of control. That's what we think.
So they're full
That's
moons,
interesting.
but they're special full moons.
Yes.
basically. And
Yeah.
one is a moon far away that looks very small.
Yes.
And one is a full moon that looks really big, and that's what people call the super moon.
moon.
When it's
Super
at
moon.
perigee, when it's closest to the Earth.
And apogee when it's in its furthest apart. And interestingly, the variation of the distance of the moon to the Earth varies by 10%, which is pretty significant actually.
Yeah.
I would assume when it's like really big, when it's a super moon, when it's perigee, when the moon's closest to the Earth. Does that mean the tides are all much higher as well? Is there a? I don't know. I didn't research that.
I don't know. I shouldn't. I don't have a concrete data, but should be have some influence because it like in the autumn time. When the moon and the earth and sun are quite lined up together, usually the tide is huge around September time.
Right.
So I do think this apogee and the perigee have some effect about it, but I need to check it, but I don't have data here.
And actually, this is very interesting because in the month of January and the month of February,
2018.
March 2018, the moon goes backwards and forwards, so it's like you can look through a list of sort of positions for the moon, you can see it. At the beginning of January, and when we also had that blue moon during that month, right? The moon was in perigee at the beginning of January, and if I look at a list of moon positions that I've got in front of me, the moon is in perigee, which is the closest to the Earth, again at the end of March.
Yes.
Ooh, interesting.
Yes.
So the
So
moon
that's
is
the
really
super moon.
close to the Earth. So symbolically, that would presumably enhance its power to influence or symbolise human events, like coming whatever the moon is representing at that time will be emphasised.
I agree.
Well, also, I mean, you might have seen in the sort of conventional mainstream media, supermoons are getting a lot of press lately. It's a popular topic.
Yeah.
And you might think from that it's something super, super special and super, super rare and has a really big effect. But however, there are 3 or 4 a year of supermoons when the moon is at its perigee. So it's not that rare. So when you read in the mainstream media and maybe some sort of more popular sort of astrology sites that the supermoons is this massive thing. The moon might look massive, but the effect isn't going to be that massive. It's just part of the cycle of the seasons, the cycle of life, and all the planets go through seasons just like us, and so does the moon.
I really like this idea because sometimes we do single out some spatial astronomical effect, phenomenon, or astrological phenomenon or something. But it's part of circle. It's part of our life.
Exactly.
So I really like this idea, and this is for astrologers that keep in mind that's part of life. It's not just like a one-off and all gone.
It's an ongoing cycle.
And like the transits of the planets.
Indeed.
They're not all going to manifest in dramatic events that will happen on that day, on that hour, at that time, like that phenomenon is at its peak. Life is like Rod was saying, like I was saying, life and the movement of the planet and the movement of the solar system, probably the whole universe, is ebb and flow, like the moon.
Absolutely.
Cyclical, and it's all a process, and everything leads one into the other. In actually, when you look at the massive bigger picture, in a very harmonious way, although it might not feel in the minutiae like a harmonious cycle.
Indeed.
What's interesting is I've just been running through the months to come for 2018, and actually the moon's in perigee quite often. It's not amazing, as you said. It's not amazingly rare. It's more frequent than 3 or 4 times a year, actually. You know, it goes backwards and forwards. There's an ebb and flow precisely.
If the moon sort of symbolises, like traditionally it was the common people, the body, and sort of a lot to do with bodily health. So presumably when it's perigee, when it's really close to the earth in whatever sign it's in, there will be more issues associated with the meaning of that sign astrologically will be brought into more focus.
Absolutely.
And when it's at its apogee, when it's smaller in the sky in that sign and furthest away, there'll be something about what that sign is describing, the symbolic nature of that sign, that will be limited or reduced or shrunk. I would assume that when it's massive in the sky, it will sensitize that sign. So I'm just spitballing here, like hypothesis, but say you had a perigee moon in, what's one perigee moon we've got this year, Sue?
I'm just looking it up, actually.
Right.
We've
Just
got
the
one this
sign.
month at the very beginning of the Leo,
So that would
on
be
the 26th of March.
Oh, interesting. So say we've got, for example, a perigee Leo moon. Leo might symbolise stuff to do with rulers because it's ruled by the sun. Traditionally it was like wild animals, like cats particularly because it's Leo, but also just and deserts and stuff like. So it might be stuff to do with those things is brought into more focus. And traditionally the full moon was said to be a time when those things were made more sensitive and a little bit more crazy. Like people say, full moon, there's more murders, there's more like accidents, there's more the whole lunatic thing.
So I think really the thing to do, if you're interested, just one little thing in terms of like you said, Sue, the moon is at its closest point perigee more than 3 or 4 times a year. But when we're talking about a supermoon, we're talking about when the perigee of the moon coincides with a full moon or a new moon, and that happens about 3 or 4 times a year.
That doesn't happen that often.
But in terms of sort of what we're talking about is the effect. The best way to do it is just to see what happens, just to watch the news, see what happens in your life. Look out for when there's a supermoon or when the moon is at an apogee or perigee. You can look up on astronomical and some astrological websites to find those dates, or you can read this. The
trusty-
Raphael's
my
Astronomical
trusty-
Ephemeris, which anyone who's interested in astrology,
Yes, should
you
have
should
one.
buy one of these
Yeah.
every year. They're very cheap and easy to
Yeah.
get hold of, and just see what happens. As
Yeah.
Marcus said, look at the sign that the moon
Yeah.
is in. Look at the
Yeah.
what's associated
Yeah.
with that
It's
sign.
interesting
Do
things,
your
yeah.
own research. That's the fun of
Indeed.
astrology.